Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is zeeshanrahatkureshi. I'm the founder and CEO of High Achievers League. So today we have with us Dr. Ali Raza Bhatt. He is the professor in computer science and ECE by courtesy. He is the associate department head for faculty development CS. He's the director stack at CS Center for Computer Systems, and he is also director distributed systems and storage laboratory at Virginia Tech University, USA. So, welcome, Dr. Ali. Thank you for being part of this interview series.
Walaikum salam, Zishan. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to looking forward to this chat.
So, you have done, mashallah, so much at such a young age. So, can you help us understand how do you manage so much?
So I think let's look at a couple of things. One is that you have to set your goals both for your professional life and your personal life. But once you have set your goals, I think that of course one thing sounds like the same old thing, which is work hard towards them. But one approach that I recommend is to break those things down into more achievable objectives. So instead of saying, hey, let's say in research we have to write papers, so instead of saying, hey, this year I'm going to write 10 papers, you start with one experiment, you see where it leads you, you build on it, and slowly you end up creating like an engine and a pipeline. And then before you know it, you have achieved so many goals. So I would say staying focused and keeping at it and not getting disillusioned by failures, I think is the key to achieving different things. Now, the amount of stuff you achieve is relative. I think it depends on the size of your team, people who are helping you. So in my case, I am lucky to have a team of graduates, researchers, students who work in my lab. So because of the number is high, you're able to achieve more things. But I think the focus should be on quality, not necessarily the quantity.
Okay, thank you so much. How did your own journey as a student from Pakistan to the US? How did it all start and what happened?
So I did my. So where do you want to go to the school level? I went to St. Anthony's School in Lahore. So I did my senior Cambridge back then. That's what it was called. Then I went to Government College and did my FSc. And after that, I was at UET pursuing a degree in electrical engineering. They did not have computer science at the moment when I was there. But I did focus on communication. The choices were power and communication is where I focused on. During the course of my undergrad education, we started looking into probably doing a master's or an advanced degree in the US. And again, just for reference, I graduated from UT in 2000. So at that time, the amount of information available was kind of limited. The internet was about to come out. So you can find some information, but it was not as widespread as what it is known right now. So I remember a couple of friends of ours, we just started studying for the GRE because that was the first step. And we started looking into applications. We got lucky that we had at UET a professor who used to work for a lot of US research institutions, and I got an opportunity to work with him for at least a couple of like last year project, final year project, things like that. And that opened up lots of opportunities. I remember we were able to publish our research paper in the last year of undergraduate at UET. And when we applied, then of course, it led to, at that time, we wasn't sure. I mean, we didn't have enough guidance. So some people would tell us, hey, you cannot apply to a PhD because you have to first have a master's. So I remember that I applied to many places, some where you could apply to a direct PhD after undergraduate. And I applied to Purdue as a master's student because I was under the impression that they will not entertain a direct to PhD
Right.
application. However, in the midst of the application, and it gets crazy around that time, the end of December, January, you're sending things in. And keep in mind that at that time you still had to post some of the applications. So you have to package them, go to the post office, send them out, and just keep your finger crossed that they will get to the university. and email was there, but you didn't have like an online portal like you have these days. Anyway, so I applied, and very quickly, I think, the GRE score was pretty high. You have to work on those things. You have to meet the benchmarks, is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, and I did. I think it's okay to retry. In my case, I tried only once, and that score was sufficient. But if even if I needed to, at that time I didn't know, but now I know that if I had to retry and take the exam again, it would have been not a problem. Now that I am on the other side of the thing, it's not about the number of tries. It does add to cost and it does add to time. So you have to balance how many tries you want to take on that, and you probably want to give it your best shot in the first try. Okay, anyway, so I applied, and lo and behold, somebody from Purdue sent me a note saying, "Hey, we have seen your portfolio and we would like to offer you a PhD admission. Would you consider it?" And I'm like, "Would I? Of course I'll consider it." I was super excited, and yeah, I came here. I was offered a GRA, like a research assistantship, and that's it. Long story short, before I knew it, I had a PhD.
Yeah.
Just to give the background, my PhD is from ECE, Electrical and Computer Engineering at Purdue University, and my focus was on computer systems. So when I graduated and I was looking for a job, and this is early 2006, of course, a lot of my colleagues, my friends went into industry. Purdue had a very good placement opportunities for graduates. So most of our friends went to industry and are doing good and really are doing really well in the industry right now. But some of us wanted to go into academia. But my point was that because I had focused at that point almost 6 to 8 years of my life focusing on computer systems and software stack instead of the hardware stack where I was trained as an undergrad. So I was hoping to get into a computer science department, which happened for me at Virginia Tech. I found the job. I joined here as assistant professor in 2006. And since then, actually from the last 20 years, my research has been on developing computer systems. And I can fully qualify as a computer scientist now.
Great, great. So your conversation did remind me of the time when I remember we had to go to this US Embassy library somewhere in Lahore, and we had to look at the physical prospectus of the universities and contact the professors. So it was not that convenient. Like these days, students, they are very lucky. They can just apply at the click of a button.
Absolutely, but I think this is a two-edged sword because we had limited information, so we were missing out on many things. We had just like rumored-based information sometimes. I remember this is really you will find that very ridiculous, but I remember that coming out of UET, some of us believed that UT Austin CS or ECE will be our safety school. This is like a top-ranked department
Yeah.
in the world, but that's what we believed because everybody we knew who had applied gotten in. At that time we were too young to realize that those people had stellar portfolios. But now, so ignorance is bliss. We applied, but now you can get into cognitive overload. You can get into too much information, and cutting through the weed in that information could be tricky. It can take a lot of your time. Um, One thing, because we are beginning to talk about that, is that most important thing when you are applying to a graduate school in the US is that you have to do your homework and you have to focus on what is it that you are going to talk to people about. Universities like top ranked universities get 800, 900, sometimes 1,000 applications for master's and PhD program.
Right.
And many times it may not be possible for your application to have been seen by the right people. So let's say if you like to do one kind of research or you are really good in, I don't know, I'm going to talk about computer science because that's where I am. But let's say that you are really, really good in building communication systems or, building networking systems. Let's make it simple. Let's say you're really good in networking, you enjoyed it, you read about it, but your application ends up in front of people who do machine learning, and then your background doesn't have some of the skills that they might be looking for, or vice versa.
Right.
So it is very important that in your third year or something, almost like a year or 2 years before you want to start a program, you start reaching out to the professor. You go to the university's website, you look at the people, you try to figure out what research they are doing, and don't blanket send emails because that is useless. But if you find some people who are doing research that you find interesting, read about their research, try to talk to see what kind of work they're doing, and try to send an email and try to make a more one-on-one connection. That is, you're more likely to get a reply. So let's say around this time of the year, you won't believe it, I get thousands of emails, and I'm not the only one because the admission season is coming up, application deadlines are coming up, and it is not possible for me to even find time to reply to those emails. So typically, really, I will look at and not to be cynical, but I will have like a few second look at the email, and if it catches my eye, it catches my eye, and I'm going to reply and interact with
Right.
you. But if that's otherwise, then you will go into the journal pool. But if you do talk to me, then what will happen is that this happens with many too, is that most likely I will say, hey, let's have like a Zoom call or chit chat, or if nothing else, I will say, here's my grad student. Why don't you talk to them and see if this is something you would like to do? And now, if that were to happen, you have improved your chances of your application getting a much thorough review significantly. I think this is key, and this transcends the area. You have to do those kind of things in any area you're applying. Basically, what you're doing is, as a potential grad student, you are expressing your interest and you are showing initiative that, hey, I looked at what you were doing. This is the reason I find this work interesting. And let's see what else I can learn. And most people will only chat with you. I don't think anyone will give you work to do because, I mean, many of us believe that, you have to still wrap up your undergrad degree or other work. So it's not that these kind of contacts are not meant for, oh, let me start doing work right now. No, it's more about, here are the things I have done, and I think that those will have a good alignment with the work that you are doing. And I think that improves your chances. Now, of course, you still have to go through a very rigorous admissions committee review and all those things. But generally, it always serves your case better if you have made that contact. Um, and focusing on a couple of schools where you would really like to go and picking out people with whom to interact can really help your case. Hopefully that gave people some background. Yeah.
Right. So, what if a student has already applied and given your name as one of the, preference professors that he or she would like to work with, and then you receive an email where the student informs you that they have already given your name because their research interest matches with yours, and just to, intimate you so that you know when the file goes to the admissions committee. So, what do you think about that?
I mean, that is okay. It won't hurt. Generally, though, you have to be a little bit careful in the sense that many professors are busy, and many, like, depends on. So now you are exposing yourself to how that interaction will come across. So two of the cases can happen. So first of all, let me tell you one thing, that when you apply and you list some people, the first cut of resource evaluation is the admissions committee. This is within the department admissions committee. You still have to meet. So there is different levels of admissions you have to get. For the graduate school, I'm not talking about undergraduate education, which is a totally different way of doing admissions. For the graduate school, mostly the admission will start at the department you are applying to. So there is a
Right.
committee there which will look for basic markers of proficiency, like good grades, publications. The higher rank the school, the more it is important, or the stronger the lab you want to work with, the more important it is that you have some promise of research. You'll be up against international students who may have like a series of publications. But rest assured that if you're coming from Pakistan, people on the other side understand the resources available to the students.
They're
And it is
limited.
not necessarily expected that you will have tons of paper, although some of our universities are doing well. And I do see portfolios where people have written very strong papers, depending on who you're working with. But generally, though, the promise of research is important. So the application goes there, and if, let's say, if my name is there, the admissions committee, after doing the first round of making sure that you meet certain markers and they will reach out to me and say, hey, such as like there will actually be generally like a system in which my name will be listed, and I can go and filter all the students based on my name. And then it will depend on me to provide feedback. So at that point, if that point comes, so you have to be ready, because if I have never talked with you, right, then the only feedback I can provide is go look at your physical application, right? Which can have many interesting things, and sometimes you find really good students in there. But if you have already reached out to me and I would say, hey, I think this student reached out. So that's the second level where I will say, okay, let me look into this person's portfolio a little bit more, because you might have written some more interesting things in your email. But the best is that if I see your name and I say, oh, yeah, I've been talking with this student for the last couple of months. They had a conversation with my grad students. They're a good communicator. It seems like look at all the things I can say because you and I have chatted. And nowadays, I think there is absolutely no excuse for not trying to do that, because, we have Zoom, we have email, we have things. So there's an opportunity. Now, of course, I'm not saying that you should bombard people with emails. Be selective. I do get, and believe me, I do get emails which are like, I would like to work in your lab at your university in your under your guidance, full stop. And I don't know, I mean, that's just like a blanket email
Mm.
versus if you write that, hey, I saw your paper, paper you published last year on cloud computing, and I was reading it and I found it very interesting. You guys are looking for, opportunities and what have you, and things can go from there. Now, you have to keep in mind that a lot of things have to fall in place. In addition to all that, it also depends on the funding situation. Depending on the economy, sometimes the departments, the labs are flush with funding. And, a couple of years ago, I'm looking for 6 people because projects are just sitting there post COVID and all that. And then there are times when there is no new GRA funding. So then I can provide good recommendation for you within the internal system, but you still have to secure funding from the
Funding.
department. So like I said, that many things have to fall in place for you to have one, admission, and two, funding. I think I believe that going to grad school without funding is extremely not
Difficult,
recommended.
yes.
Yeah, and it's very difficult. I mean, it's some people can do it depending on which countries. There are people I know who come in and take a loan for masters because they know that they can make that money back pretty quick. But you have to be careful these days because the industry hiring is not where it was 2 or 3 years ago.
Hmm.
So you have to be careful what kind of trap you want to get yourself into.
Right.
And PhD, absolutely, you cannot take on it. Like in my area, as a systems area, I usually take 5 to 6 years to do a PhD. Usually don't have to do postdoc, so that's your terminal degree, and you can get a job. So that you cannot do without having proper funding. That's just too long of a time to
True.
try to self fund.
Correct. Right. Okay. So, Dr. Ali, what kind of a place is Virginia? So, give us a snapshot. What's the student life like on campus, and what's the location like?
Okay, so Virginia, I mean, Virginia is a big state, so we are in somewhat of the southwest side of the state of Virginia. It's more rural. It is extremely beautiful. It's a very small town. Most of the universities in the U.S. are going to be in university towns where the university is the biggest employer, and everybody else is an ecosystem that supports that university. Of course, you have your big city universities like Columbia's and Georgia Tech's and Stanford's and what have you. But most of the schools that you hear about, most state schools are going to be in these small university towns. They tend to be very livable, beautiful, walkable, designed to make life for students easier. They do tend to be a bit remote, so getting in and out outside the university could be like outside town could be a little bit tricky. But once you're here, like let's I can talk about Virginia Tech, and we live in a small town called Blacksburg. There's about 30,000 plus people, students, and then there's another 35,000 people who live here. So you can, compared to Pakistan, it's almost like one small neighborhood.
Right.
But it's widespread, and because it's a university town, it is very international. You know, you have small samplings of foods from everywhere. You have a smaller sampling of you can do grocery shops. Your regular living style is here, and day-to-day life is comfortable, if you will. It's also, in the grand scheme of things, it's not going to be as expensive as living in the big US cities, because those can be extremely expensive, and students tend to be okay here. Having said that, in the last couple of years, the cost of living has been rising everywhere, so those challenges exist. But that's one thing. Now, in terms from some of the things that people notice immediately in places like this is the quality of the air is just fresh. You're gonna feel
Mm.
much better. This is just a beautiful place. It's green. I remember when I first came to Purdue back in 2000, I was just amazed at, especially from Lahore. I mean, Lahore is good, but we don't focus too many things on greenery. You have
True.
hardly any parks, and other than the mall road, you don't even see older trees anywhere, right? I was lucky that I went to a school which had a playground. Actually, our school had more than one playground, but I think some of the modern schools I've seen is just a building with not even a playground, right? So
True.
here you come in and you see greenery. It's naturally beautiful. In smaller town, people tend to be very nice. I'm not going to say that about bigger cities, because bigger cities have similar challenges as anywhere in the world. It's not unique here. So I think people would like it. Now, some of the other challenges, though, is that you will, if you're coming out of your home for the first time, you will feel very lonely. Mental health challenges have been on the rise as of recent, because people, when you are at home, many of our folks are just living at home till they decide to come, for an international education. So I do run into students who feel stressed out because of that. The work pressure is there, but it's the loneliness that can get you sometimes, because I mean, we. Especially if you're living in a bigger city in Pakistan, you have become used to a bigger social circle and what have you. So those things are good. For the practicing Muslims, there's a good masjid here. This is going to be typical for that's going to be typical for most places in the US, especially university cities, and you can find support there. There is a Pakistani Student Association. I think when I was new, I and the students had less age gap, and over the years, I have become older. But they do activities, so there's places for students to hang out and connect, and of course, common interests also bring people together, like from professional groups to debating club to if you're oh, on top of that, some of the excellent things that are available here, like the intramural facilities, which will be like your tennis courts and your basketball courts and your gym and your swimming court. Those things are going to be just world class. I mean,
Right.
if you are one of those people who enjoy, and I highly suggest, I think you have to be very careful when you come for graduate school. It's not something you're going to do for one semester and be done. So it's very good to have a balance, and these facilities provide you to have an opportunity to balance your having working hard for towards your education and research, and also taking care of yourself. So yeah, so life, I would say that I think it's nice.
All right, good to hear that. So I've noticed you go to places to other countries and especially during summer, and I think you teach there as well. So that's one of the perks of being, I think, a professor at a world-class university. You guys have off days, you have summers off, and how does that work?
Oh, so that's very typical in the US. So typically, if you're a professor, you have a 9 month appointment. So the university pays you for 9 months, and generally, and then for the rest of the 3 months, you either raise money through grants, like research grants, or you can travel and you can do other stints if you like. Depending on the summer, some people like to take it off and just focus on themselves, because research could be very time consuming and very stressful. And some people just teach classes in the summer too. But most of us, especially in R1 schools, which are going to be your research active schools,
Right.
most people will be focusing heavily on research and research dissemination, which means like visiting conferences, talking about your research, publishing papers. Those are going to be the. So the perks are, I think the perks are that as from the academic job point of view, the perks are that you own your own time, and because you own your own time, then you have a bit of more flexibility. um, like I know some people say you can do one kind of research in industry. It's not the case. I think you can do anything impactful in industry and academia. You can make a change. You can have impact both in academia and industry, especially in the industry in the US. If I create an algorithm that makes 50 million people happy on TikTok, I think it's an impact. It's a different kind of impact. It's not discovering the new. It's not going to win you the physics
Mm.
Nobel
Right.
Prize, but its impact. It's going to make people. It has social impact. But I think that the biggest difference there is that who owns your time. If you work for industry, you definitely get paid much better. But of course, people are paying you for your time. So in academia, you have much more flexibility. But keep in mind that you have to earn to that point, meaning earning, meaning you have to earn that flexibility. In the beginning, you have to work hard. And then it's not that you become lazy later on. I think what happens after doing something for a couple of years is that you build a system and you build a procedure, and those procedures are more optimized. A good friend of mine talks about research as a big freight train. So when you're about to start it, it takes a lot of energy, and the efficiency could be like half a mile per hundreds of gallon or
Mm.
something. But once that train start rolling and it's on its way, then you have like couple of 100 miles per gallon, even if you have a huge train. And the reason for that is, it has momentum, it's rolling. So I think what you want to do is you want to get your train rolling in the beginning, which means you got to work hard, you got to stay focused. And I think most importantly, I'm going to say, which I say to my students all the time, is that not let the failures, you know, uh, put you off or discourage you, because it's a very, very competitive world. So you have to keep trying. Yeah,
So, as they say, there is no failure, it's only learning. So, it's a learning process.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah.
So, Dr. Ali, thank you so much for your time. I know you're a busy man, so we'll keep it till there. And we are really proud of you, doing so much and representing Pakistan in that part of the world. And that was an honor talking to you today. So, thank you so much for being part of this.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. And I again, my message would be for people to work hard on your portfolios even before the applications become due. So, a couple of, I think if you're an undergrad student, start thinking, and if you want to do research, I think towards the end of your second year, you should start thinking about what projects you're going to do and things like that. And I think that significantly increases your chances. And don't be afraid to reach out to people. I mean, the worst is they won't reply to your email. So big
Right.
deal. Yeah.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank
Thank
you.
you,
Thank you
Zishan.
so
Thank you so
much.
much for having me. This
Thank
has
you.
been fun. Yeah. Thanks.
Allah Hafiz. Bye.
Hafiz. Bye.